I'm doing my presentation on the history of volleyball. To start, side out. What does side out mean? Side out simply means to get the ball back once the other team has gained possession. Volleyball is a sport played at family picnics, high school, club level, college, and even the biggest stage of all, the Olympic Games. The sport is played throughout the entire world. As a high school player myself, I know the rules of volleyball, I know the rotations, and pretty much know the game inside and out. So combining those experiences with research that I've done about the history of volleyball, I'm here today to tell you from where it started, the journey over the years to where it is now. Today I will provide you with an interesting perspective and history of the sport of volleyball, who created it, why he created it, and the origin of the sport and how it became from its humble beginnings to now played as an Olympic sport around the world. According to the Federal International Volleyball Association, the origin of the game of volleyball date back to 1895 when a man named William Morgan created a game called Mintonette. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but that is what the game first was called before later on it was developed into a game called a volleyball. While working at the YMCA, also known as the Young Men's Christian Association, William was a recent college graduate who took the position as the director of the physical education department of the YMCA. He proved to be very good at his job, and the memberships in his course began to grow and grow. As the memberships of Morgan's grew, he realized that he needed to develop a game that could appeal to varying ages, no matter what your age was, your capabilities were, how tall, fast, skinny, big. It didn't matter. That's not what Morgan cared about. He just wanted to play a game and create a game that anyone could play at any time. The game of basketball was introduced in the late 1800s and was a very popular sport among young women, or among young men, The YMCA members Morgan saw a need to develop a game that could be played for all ages. As he began to think of how to create a new game, he first thought about the game of tennis, which required a ball, rackets, a net, shoes, all this stuff that would cost a lot of money if he decided to incorporate that into his membership. So what he did was he wanted something that required less equipment, but liked the idea of having a net in the game. His first step in creating volleyball was to raise the tennis net to 6 feet 6 inches for his new game. Now that William has decided on a game with the net, next step was to create a ball. He tried to use a basketball, but that proved to be way too heavy as the ball wouldn't go high when you would try to volley it, and it was just way too hard to get the ball over the net. So what he did was he created a ball with a company called Spalding, which is a very, very well-known company today. What they did was they made the ball have a leather outside shell with a rubber inner tube to hold the air inside. The ball weighed no more than 12 ounces and no less than 9 ounces, and the ball was 25 and not more than 27 inches in diameter. The specifications of the ball still remain today, and it hasn't changed. Next, he needed to develop the rules of the game and worked with two close friends to come up with ideas to make the game run properly. The game was simple. You could play it in a gym, you could play it outdoors, you could pretty much play it wherever you want, and there was an unlimited amount of players allowed to play at a time. The whole object of the game was to get the ball across the net back and forth. Hence the name volleyball, and they wanted to volley the ball back and forth to each other. At that time, there was no, let's try to get the point. It was more of keeping the ball going. According to volleyball.com, the first game of volleyball was played on July 7th, 1986 at Springfield College. Now note, this is the first volleyball game with the new name volleyball rather than the old name Mintonette. A new sport was born, and volleyball quickly grew in popularity in the United States and then in other countries as well. After Morgan introduced his newly created sport, it was adopted by the YMCA across the country, and volleyball societies began to grow like crazy. The United States and other countries developed the game and had everyone be playing it. According to the Federal International Volleyball Association, the first country outside of the United States to adopt volleyball was Canada in the early 1900s. As you can see from these pictures, without color, you can tell that these photos were taken a very long time ago. Other countries soon joined in, and volleyball was played across the world. By 1916, the Spalding Volleyball Company, the company that Morgan worked with to create the volleyball itself, estimated that more than 200,000 people were playing organized volleyball. This number quickly grew when the National Collegiate Athletic Association published rules and the participation in the game began to grow. Up until the 1930s, volleyball remained more of a leisure picnic type of sport until the NCAA decided to get involved, and the growth of the sport increased tremendously when this happened. At the same time, international interest in volleyball continued to increase, and as early as 1913, Asia was hosting the Far Eastern Games in Manila, where volleyball was played competitively. As the sport grew in popularity, the rules were modified to limit the number of players, and the sport became increasingly more competitive. The scoring was changed from 21 points to 15 points, and they also incorporated the rule of the 3 touch each side. So now each team could only touch the ball 3 times before the ball would have to be delivered back to the other team over the net. According to the volleyball.com, as the popularity of the sport grew, new governing organizations were formed to organize play. Referees were introduced to the sport, and the competition grew even more. In 1937, the U.S. Volleyball Association was formed and as the governing body of the competitive play in the United States. And 10 years later, the Federal International Volleyball Association became the governing body for the entire world as a whole. The adoption and love of the sport of volleyball by players across the globe made it an obvious and popular choice to add this sport for men and women to the Olympic Games. In 1964, at the Summer Olympic Games hosted by Japan and played in Tokyo, was the first time indoor court volleyball was played as an Olympic sport. Both men and women teams participated in this sport at the Olympic Games. According to the Olympic Organization website, the men's gold medal was won by Russia in 1964, and the Japanese women's team took home the gold medal on their home courts. Over the history of volleyball, there hasn't been any one country or one team that has dominated year after year after year. So this explains why it's so competitive, because every team has a chance every game that they play. No matter what the skill levels are, there is always a chance to win in volleyball. The FIVB website noted that Russia has won the most men's medals, and the U.S. men's team was very dominant in the Olympics during the 1980s. Most recently, competition in the men's category has come from Italy and Brazil for the women's teams, who have yet to win Olympic golds. The international competition is competitive from many different countries. The sport is enjoyed by many families in the backyard gatherings, played competitively at high school, collegiate, professional, and even the Olympics, like I was saying. Morgan's idea to create a sport for all ages and athletic capabilities was successful and continued to grow in popularity. Personally, I enjoyed the years I was able to play volleyball competitively at the club level, junior national level, and high school level. Throughout the world, volleyball players have one goal, and that is to side out. Thanks for listening, guys.